Good morning, folks. Good morning. Good morning. Just really like awakening. It's July 15, 2019, and the time is, according to my clock, 8:44 a.m. I see that it's a lot of sun outside. You can see the light coming through the crack of the curtain. I was just thinking of things about the immigration. I had been watching some programs about the employment and things like that, the trends. And this one YouTuber, he really broke it down, certain things for me to consider. And everything that you see, the laws that are passed and certain things. So I just wanted to talk about it. I talked about some of these things before, but I just want to elaborate more. Now, you have a lot of farms in the United States. They were showing on television, on YouTube, about the labor force. You have these modern farmers. I get the impression that these white farmers are long-time farmers for generations in the United States. Now, at one point, they said that, this church I used to go to said that at one time, I think they said 70% of Americans were farmers. People lived in farmland, in the country. People made their food. And you had slavery. And yes, people like to say that slavery ended about almost 150 years ago. People might think, oh, that's a long time ago. But this is the trickery of some of those people who benefited from it. Now, I believe a lot of things are socially engineered. It's the intent, and how intent could influence the politics and behaviors of the descendants of these people who owned massive amount of land. See, yes, land is king, those who have that land. But nowadays, it costs money to own land, to maintain it, I should say. You might have gotten it real cheap some years back. It might have been handed down to you when someone passed away and you inherited that land. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of acres, and you have horses and a beautiful home. And then you had the cheap labor. It's no longer slavery, but you have that other system. I forget the term that you call it. They'll probably come to me. Sharecroppers. That's right, sharecroppers. So you work the land and you do get paid, but you live on the land to work it for the other person. But you can never get out of debt. It was exploitive in nature. And it was another form of continuing a slave labor force. And yes, you have white sharecroppers too. They couldn't pay off the debts either. And their labor was exploited also. And then you had this system of, Jim Crow. It was harassment. And they needed not to do that. Even after their hardships, black people's hardships, they weren't violent people. And I think in one of my videos, my audio tapes, I should say, about the wild, wild West, it wasn't black people that were going to the West. There were laws, actually, that prevented blacks to enter certain states in the West. So that drive was prohibited against us going to the West, and thus we weren't doing all the violence, even though that we were prevented to go to the West. But there was the wild, wild West, as they call it. But who was the wild one? See, I think all these things are social engineered, designed to keep black people in a specific location, while the social construction of the system take place on the West Coast. And it's the West Coast, in modern times, it has what they call tent cities. And you have a lot of white people along the West Coast that are out of their minds, living in filth. Their mind is taken from them. Drugs. Why this evil? I believe it's all by design. But either way. But see, this is what, evil always leaves a trail behind them. Okay, California, that West Coast, Washington State, Oregon, they're out of their mind. And what made them, during those days, what we call the wild, wild West, what made these new white people, post-slavery, what made them so frantic and killers? Such a frenzy. You would think that the former slaves, black slaves, would have been on a frenzy. But we weren't. They had such a hunger, these new whites, post-slavery whites living in America. Now, I don't know whether, when I say new whites, I mean that it was a new era. That's what I mean. I don't know whether these people were the descendants of those people living in the United States during slavery, or are these new European immigrants? Either way, they were on a frenzy, carrying guns and just shooting everything in sight. But meanwhile, the blacks stayed in their towns, basically, and some of them flourished. But quickly, as you see, the Jim Crow laws were enacted, harassment, big time on these people to intimidate. See, this is part of the social construction. See, just like you have cowboys, and the little dogs, that work the land, the little dogs are just to nip at the cows, to keep them in check. Think of the lynchings, the laws and everything like that dog, the dog of harassment. See, they have an aim to control, to intimidate, and again, they do follow certain rituals. And I'm seeing through some of the YouTube videos that you have some families, what they call bloodline families. And they're saying that some of these bloodlines are linked to this so-called Jesus and Mary Magdalene. So they take the sacred, whether you're a Christian or not, whatever, they take what is considered the sacred, this religious man and his family, allegedly he existed, and then the descendants of this family are special bloods, aka Anunnaki maybe, the lizard people. And these people, this special bloodline, are then terrorized. The children are being terrorized according to some researchers. They are raped, beaten, satanic rituals that are done upon them. And then they put into an assignment. They work for various agencies. They have them work overseas, all over the world, doing these secret projects. Some of them, the women in particular, are being used as sex slaves to have these relations with politicians, big corporate men. And it's just to, again, bring their influence upon these leaders, new leaders or businessmen, and then blackmail them. But what is the goal? Let's say if these politicians and corporate giants are compliant, say, hey, you are of that bloodline, hey, I'll help you out. What if they were in total compliance to just get along? What is their end game of all this? What's the end game? It's not just to harass and blackmail. There's a goal. Because once you have the total control, what is your plan? And they said only 2% of white people at the time of slavery had slaves. So that leaves 98% of the people. And so these people, the 98% might have been very poor, and maybe these were the ones that were doing the wild, wild west. So it's keeping that pump moving. You make the 98% poor and give them the illusion of freedom to get their own land, have them kill off Indians, have them prevent those poor black people Rather than having an alliance with them because they were poor too, you oppress them and frighten them. They get out west with a vengeance. So it kept that tension going. And it's like a generator. It's creating that energy difference, And that little gerbil wheel just keeps on going now. And so, now getting back to the East Coast. So these people were being, blacks were being frightened off their homes. And then you had the Black Wall Street and you had the system that they created a series of events, the system. And they made an excuse that one man allegedly touched one lady in an elevator. They captured him, the system, and they probably would have just lynched him. He had a buddy. See, he had a black buddy. It was just a small group of black people. It could have even been just one, but it was a small group that came to the black man's rescue. See, black Americans are losing their true heroes. They were heroes back then. You black men, you're not no Indian. You were warriors. You had a backbone back then. They want you to forget what you're really made out of. You had morals. You had a work ethic. And your buddy was in need and in trouble. And so you came together as a group. You might have been a small group, but you were effective. And you got that buddy out of jail. And then the system, actually, they had planes back then, and they firebombed your whole community. See, that's by design, people. That was done by design, the firebombing of your town. Because, see, they didn't want you to be intact because of the social engineering. These Masons, frat boys, see, yeah, they have their meetings, all right, and they exclude you. But they have alternative frat institutions for you. But these are just an extension of the system to have you do what the main system wants you to do. It's not your own system. They are social engineering to remove you off the land so you can be controlled like little cows and the little dogs nipping at your heels. And then they force you to move up north. Because, see, they don't want, see, you had all the skills. I can't stop emphasizing this. You knew how to work the land, the precious, precious land of America. Black man and black woman. You worked the land. You knew how to sew and make garments. You knew how to take care of animals. And some of you may have even known how to do mining work, at least in the Caribbean. Some of the islands that did mining for precious metals. You knew how to do smithing. You knew how to make containers. You had all the knowledge that made America great in its wealth. Now you're being pushed up north. See, now they want you to have amnesia. Amnesia. Yes, amnesia happened. The trauma pushed you off your land, the land that you knew, and then gave you amnesia when you went up north. Now you had to deal with the cold weather. Yes, you had slaves up north, but the system was not as intact. It ended earlier though. But you had the crafts too. You knew how to do this smithing because you had horses up north too. You had animals. You had some farmland, but it was more industry, a different type of industry, more of things rather than the farmland on the East Coast, Northeast Coast. But now you're forced into what they call urban centers. This is part of the design. You are harassed, and these terrorist groups, I shouldn't say that word, but these special motivating groups, I'll call them then, that were set upon your heels, was to manipulate. And yes, some of them are into witchcraft as part of their rituals, bloodletting rituals that gave them their strength, their perverted strength. And you notice all these people in those agencies, there were sheriffs, lawyers. These are all initiates. You're forced up north, many of you, and those already up north, they seem to move out. You cannot find any of the blacks that were here that were brought to New York as slaves. You can't find them. They have no record of them. What happened to them? Where did they go? There's no record of them in New York, the state of New York. So primarily the blacks that are here are from the southern states. And of course, you have them from the Caribbean too, but primarily it's going to say from the south, southeast. And then they had you live in apartment dwellings, but you don't own the buildings though. See again, the landlord, the landowner, you don't own the land primarily, those buildings. Someone else does. And in New York, do your research too and see who are the landlords in New York City, the New York tri-state area. Who owns those many dwellings, the apartment buildings? Outside of what they call the projects, that's government. But you're hindered, your hands are like tied. And as I shared in some of my videos about these new technologies, and now the implementation of the 5G, that technology that uses these low energy frequencies to do further controlling / social engineering. It controls your mind. It also promotes certain diseases. Again, promoting certain diseases. Also, this, like the Nazis, to experiment on you, to understand diseases. So how to control? How do you kill a certain group? Well, you study the genetics, and then you study the technology upon your body, what body part it attacks. So you can create certain types of diseases upon a demographic. You can control their mind. And so now, you're living in modern times, and you're surrounded by people that really don't look like you. Now they're getting new people to work around you. So you're in the inner core, black family. Now they have trying to develop a buffer, a very large group now, that are coming to America, and they're given free reign, pretty much free reign. They get into the programs in the higher education system. They get their degrees, their masters, doctorates. They're not harassed by the cops, I notice. They could be just as dark, some of them, but you don't hear about them being tracked down by the system, followed in by cars. And I heard this one program, they were saying, oh, well, the cops pull them over more because it's considered a high crime area, so we're just being proactive. But it's a highway, and anyone can go through past a highway, but it can be, you're going from part A to part Z. So anyone could be in that middle zone, that troubled spot, but you only seem to be pulling over a certain type of person. Okay? But somehow this other group, I've never heard of it. They're people of color, but they're being allowed these new positions that make a lot of money, and you're surrounded by them now. Now the whites don't live really around you now. Now they're coming. They're spreading out. They go moving away from these cities here, and now the new tenants in these apartments don't look. They're people of color. And they're acquiring the positions. So now you're in limbo. Now you have to deal with the 5G. You have to deal with your health. And now you're dealing with your mind. And now they're getting almost forgotten now. Now, they're still bringing in the cheap labor. So they're creating a new system now. The new masters are the new immigrants from overseas. But those new people coming from the Americas, they're going to be the new minority. The cheap labor that used to work on those farms, we used to work those farms in the South, the cheap labor force. Now, they say, we're not going to use you anymore, black man and woman. We're going to use these other people. They're going to replace you. We're going to treat them just maybe a little better. We're going to exploit their labor, though, because they're great workers. And you know, this land now that they work on, the farmland, here I'm an old farmer for 8 generations. I got new labor hands. They work real hard. But we're going to use our influence now in the government. We want to keep you. We don't want those black people anymore. They're too much trouble. Yeah, we forced them up north. Let the north handle them in those urban centers where they're then arrested by the system or given certain chemicals to alter their mind, to make them wild and kill their own families. Now we got these new people from these other countries in the Americas. They're real tiny. They're like a little cactus. They're short and plump. Yeah, they got their little thorns, but you know, you just have to handle it carefully. They'll work for you. They don't need a lot to survive, just like a cactus. Just give them a little bit of money, just a little. They work real hard for you. They're real hardy. And they work that land. And they work real fast. But you know, we're cheap too, though. We're cheap. We don't want to pay them anything. Even though now the minimum wage is $15 an hour. But we're not going to give them that. And again, their cactus, they don't need much water to survive. But I'll squeeze it out, though, their labor. They don't mind working. They don't mind working in the hot sun. Because they're originally from this part of the, you know, certain countries in the Americas where it's real hot and dry. The land is real harsh, but they survive it. They love the weather. It's just like back home for them. But, you know, we don't want to give them any benefits, any health benefits, because a legit business, they have to have like a health plan and stuff like that, and, you know, health insurance. So I'll talk to the people in the legislature, and we'll create laws so that if they're under 25 years of age, they don't need any documentation of citizenship. You don't have to be a citizen. You could be what they call a guest worker. That's the euphemism. We can't say that other word, what they are. But that they're guests. But you know, like the host, this hostess doesn't want to be, you know, really make their guests comfortable. They don't want to give out the hors d'oeuvres, you know, I have someone else pay for that. So they have these laws now, you know, because we're not going to pay for the health insurance plan. So we'll make it so that they can just go into any hospital, any public hospital, and get free health care and have somebody else pay for it. We have those people because they, you know, these other, you know, black men and women, there are a lot of them. And, you know, they do the work, and there's about 80 million of us. Let's use their tax money to finance, through their taxpayers, the health care of the new guest worker. So, you know, you have to keep these new cacti strong and healthy to work the new farmer's land. So there's always a reason behind certain things. And you notice that even though we work hard the black family, we work. But our money doesn't seem to be feeding us. Where's our money going? Well, I'll tell you where our money is going. It's going to these programs to take care of these new arrivals, these cacti. They don't really need much to survive on. They don't need a lot of water. They're real hardy. They hold a lot. And they endure everything, the labor. They don't have to learn the language. Oh, we have Tent City. And you have that, what do you call that land? Where you can escape to. I forget the term that they call it. It's on the tip of my tongue. You know, they have the same concept in the Bible, in the Old Testament. If someone commits a crime, they could retreat in these special zones and no one attack them. And that's also what they're implementing here. So it's a wicked system. It's an exploitive system to protect the wickedness that's being done. Sanctuary cities, that's the name, sanctuary cities that are being enacted here. But what's going to happen next? You know, so you have this new group that's displacing black families, and the black families their tax money is paying for these programs. But the black people are believing the lies about the minority status, that these are minorities, they're fellow minority. But these fellow minorities are not about you people. They're not speak on your behalf. They're taking your resources, and you wonder why there's no money to feed your own children. Why you're not thriving. You're not thriving. And you're in your schools. Now there's not enough textbooks for your children. Your seats are crowded. You're fighting now. Now you have gang wars now over turf. And you see that the longtime white residents, where are they now in New York City? They're out. They're leaving. They're not around anymore, really. The ones that seem to stay are the ones in the now alternative lifestyle. That's what I see in New York City, in Manhattan in particular. So those that are here are those alternative lifestyle people, and they're being supported. Who are supporting them? Well, you black man and woman. You think everybody, you believe everything that people tell you, but you're not looking at what's happening to you. You support the alternative lifestyle movement, the new minority movement coming to the North America. Now they have you as the warden, but the warden that's to hold your own people in check. The new slave driver. You're oppressing your own people. You don't love your own anymore. Everybody wants to call themselves by some other name. And many of you are dipping into that alternative lifestyle movement. to give you the false illusion that you are included. You're not included. You're just a buffer to protect those who are making this movement, making this happen, this new social engineering. But you're left vulnerable. You're the insulator for every other group but yourself. And you're even policing yourself. It's a police state, so you even hear the sirens going on now. Hear that? Yeah. There's nobody insulating you. There's no one protecting your children when they go to school. You believe in the cries of the new so-called minorities entering here in the North America. And you vocalize, hey, you got to protect them. They're not your friend, and they're not helping you. You're being forced to move into prison. And who knows what they're using you in the prisons for? Yep. Where are these white people going to? Where are they going to? Well, you hear that there's a new space force. Are people being gathered to be the new colonials up in space? Is that where they're going? And they're being put into underground bases, being retrained for upspace? Are they making the new uniforms? Are their labors in the prisons being used to build the spacecraft? Well, someone has to build it. Someone is building these crafts, the uniforms. Someone has to gather the food for them too, for these long journeys out there. Someone has to do the work. And we see that one labor force is being taken over by another. And then you see one of the workers, they're not there anymore. Where did they move to? Where are they? Social engineering. Yes, life is happening very, very fast. And there's a reason behind everything. It's not just happenstance. The fear is just to promote fear, to confuse you, and as a smoke screen of terror, to prevent you from really seeing beyond the drama. Social engineering, the new phase that's happening. And in the end, there's really no winners in it. You may think you're winning, but no, you too will be exploited. So, be wary, people. There's no one safe. Whether you're white or black or brown, your labors, your bodies are all being exploited by higher ups. This is a prison planet. And the things that you see in history is all part of the bigger plan to confuse, to create the tension, social tensions, to cause that fighting, the backbiting, to keep that gerbil wheel turning and generating that energy. So just keep on asking yourself questions and ask for deliverance, how to get out of this mess. So that is my topic for today. Each one, teach one. Take care, guys. Signing off.